I am Milo Reverie, a 17-year-old boy living in the city of Timberkeep. I'm skinny, frail, my health is truly poor, and the only work I can manage is washing greens in the army kitchen of Timberkeep. Today is the same. I'm in the kitchen with my hands in water, picking off roots, teasing out mud, stacking each bundle into a basket. A dull knife hits the board with a thok, thok. The smell of scallions and stove smoke blend together. My back aches, my wrist goes numb, but the motions repeat the same way from bundle to bundle. Suddenly, behind me comes the twang of a bowstring, then a neat thunk like a nail driven into wood. I freeze and set the knife down. The sounds repeat, steady. I walk to the back door of the kitchen. Beyond the door is the grassy yard of the archery drill field. There, Timberkeep's longbow corps is training. They stand in a straight line, draw together, release together. The drill master walks the line, calling the count. Arrows fly from their hands and bite into the targets, quiver lightly, then stand still. The city flag ripples above. This is the longbow corps that guards Timberkeep, also the emblem and pride of the people. I lean on the door frame and forget the tub of greens behind me. I watch each motion, set the feet, raise the bow, draw, hold breath, release. An arrow pins the target dead center, and a short murmur runs down the line. My chest heats as if someone lit a flame there. The range is right by the kitchen, and every day I watch the longbow warriors train. And I don't know when it started, but I have always wished to train on that field even once. I pick up a stalk of celery and lay it on my palm like an imagined arrow. My other hand lifts as if holding the string. I draw lightly, inhale, then make the motion of releasing. It's only a clumsy movement in silence, but my heart beats to the rhythm of the field outside. I wish, even just once, to step past this doorway, stand on the grass, hold a real bow, and loose an arrow of my own. Not for anyone's praise, just to know I once stood on Timberkeep's shooting field. All of a sudden, Finn, the chubby boy who washes greens with me, asks if I'm going to the longbow corps tryouts tomorrow. I tell him I will, but I give a tight smile. I smile awkwardly and answer him that way because I've taken the test 5 times already. Every time I failed. The whole city knows it. People laugh at me for being too thin, for not knowing my limits. They say I was born to wash greens, that I can't become a longbow warrior. It's a little shameful, but I've heard it so often, I'm used to it. I'll still go tomorrow. My friend Finn doesn't laugh. He just nods as if it's nothing unusual. We go back to picking roots and shaking off mud. The dull knife hits the board, thok, thok, ticking with time. Timberkeep has an army, but only a single unit, the longbow corps. No spears, no swords. The whole city relies on bows and arrows. On the city's edge is a sacred forest called Evershade Grove. The elders say a forest spirit stands guard there. Wood taken from it, when made into bows and arrows, is light and durable, with power far beyond ordinary bows. Because of that, cities across the world have long schemed to invade Timberkeep to seize the grove. They want the forest, they want the wood, they want the strength in those grains. Through many generations, the longbow corps has fought countless perilous battles to drive back invaders. I'm nothing like an archer. I'm as thin as a scallion leaf. My hands shake lifting a water pail, let alone a bowstring. But every time I hear the twang from the range behind the kitchen, my heart answers it. Every time I fail the test, I come back to this kitchen to keep washing greens, and I tell myself that next time I'll be chosen. Finn encourages me to try again. His simple words feel like lifting a stone off my chest. I nod and say nothing more. I repeat to myself what I know about Timberkeep, like a short oath. Evershade Grove still stands. The forest spirit still keeps watch. The city still holds because the Longbow Corps is there to guard the walls. I don't know if I'll ever become one of them, but I know that tomorrow I will take my place in the line, accept a bow issued to the candidates, inhale, draw, and release. The afternoon drifts by slowly. We finish washing the last basket. Finn claps my shoulder, grins, and tells me to sleep early and do well tomorrow, Reverie. Night falls, and the barracks quiets. I lie on a thin blanket and think about the 5 failures. My name called by the judges, the selection list without me on it, the weary looks from everyone in the kitchen when I came back. Those things are still there, still sharp in my mind, but they can never block my resolve. Tomorrow, I will go to the tryouts. The next morning, I go to the drill field. The grass is still wet with dew. The row of wooden targets stands straight, rings painted plain as day. Ropes are stretched to mark the shooting line. The judges' table sits under a canvas awning, the scorebook laid square. Beside it are racks of bows and quivers issued to candidates. People stand in a long line, tight jackets, high-laced boots, all youths about my age. That's Timberkeep. Every young person wants into the Longbow Corps. It's the greatest honor in the city. I haven't even stepped over the line when I hear the murmuring. They say I'm the greens washer. They whisper, this is my 6th try. Someone even shouts that I should go back to the kitchen and stop wasting the judge's time. One judge glances over, the corner of his mouth lifting. A few boys my age point, mouths wide, mocking. After a moment, the registrar calls my name. My feet carry me out on their own. My hands take the issued bow. The quiver hangs heavy. I step to the line. The air thickens. My shirt sticks with sweat. My heart hammers. My hands shake, plain to see. I take a deep breath. My throat is dry. First arrow. I set the shaft on the bow. My string fingers slip with sweat. Before the string reaches my cheek, my arm is trembling hard. My vision dims for a beat. I loose. The arrow drops to the grass before the target, skewers into the dirt at an angle. Scattered laughter pops out. Second arrow. I force myself to look straight, don't listen to anything. I aim. The string scrapes my arm raw. I let go fast so I won't shake. The arrow slices past the edge of the target and slams into the wooden fence behind. A dry clack. Louder laughter now, even whistles. Third arrow. I clamp the bow tighter, try to hold my breath. Spots swim just as I reach full draw. I can't keep my balance. My toe slides back half a step without meaning to. The string snaps my forearm with a sharp sting, pain biting deep. The arrow leaps high, too high, and vanishes beyond the target. A short hush, then the whole field bursts in a roar. The judge looks at the target and calls out, Milo Reverie, 0 points. The sound is clean as a knife's cut. The crowd roars with laughter. Someone yells, the 6th time. Another voice jeers, wash today's greens extra clean for me, Archer. My face burns. My ears go hollow. All I see are laughing faces. My hands still hold the bow as if they can't feel it. My forearm throbs where the string just whipped it. I want to vanish on the spot, sink into the ground, turn into a streak of mud under their feet. I return the bow to the rack, forcing myself not to look around. Each step back from the line feels like treading on myself. I pass through the laughing crowd and hear a few people mimic thunk, thunk to tease me. I quicken my pace to get away from them. I drifted along Fletcher Row, the street lined on both sides with bow-making workshops. Hammering, string twisting, the smell of glue and freshly cut wood all mixed together. In my head, I kept turning over the words someone had let slip near my ear. 0 points, 6th time. Then the laughter on the drill field, the words, "Go back to washing greens," looping in my mind. Why was I so skinny and weak, so unfair? Thuck. A sharp pain lanced my forehead. I staggered and fell backward onto the stone. My vision went dark for a moment. Before I could make sense of it, I heard a snicker. Look, the kitchen archer. Milo Reverie, the legendary 0 points. I pushed myself up. On the ground lay a round-tipped, leather-capped practice arrow. The sting burned right between my brows. 3 boys blocked my way. Rowan, Cade, and Joss. Fresh badges of the Longbow Corps still pinned to their jackets. They must have just been accepted and came to mock me. Rowan jerked his chin. "We just made the Corps. You failed 6 times in a row. Get back to washing greens." Cade laughed loud. "It's only a blunt-tipped arrow and you're already hurting. No way you've got the guts for a real battlefield." My forehead still burned. I didn't want to bicker with them. I bent down, picked up the arrow, and held it out to return, hoping they'd let me go. Rowan barked a laugh and said, "Nice work, Greenswasher. How about I get you a job picking up arrows on the drill field? Perfect fit for you." I'd had enough of the jeers. I pointed straight at his face and said, "I will become a member of the Longbow Corps. You'll see." Rowan had always looked down on me, and when I pointed at his face, he flared, raising his voice over mine. "You want in the Corps? Beat me first. I challenge you, with blunt arrows." In the city of Timberkeep, when 2 archers challenge each other with blunt arrows, they stand 25 meters apart and keep shooting blunt arrows at each other. You can only stand your ground and shoot back, no dodging, no running, until one person yields and the duel ends. I was furious too, so I accepted it once. We'd fight right here. Rowan and I faced each other in the street. Cade chalked 2 circles 25 meters apart for us to stand in. Joss raised his hand to signal. People in the workshops peered out their doors. No one said another word. "Begin." Thuck. One straight to the gut. I folded, breath knocked out, hands not even on the string yet. Rowan had loosed the first shot without even aiming. I fumbled a knock. My hands shook. Release. The arrow veered and thudded into the wooden wall behind him. Thuck. Left bicep. Thuck. Ribs. Thuck. Thigh. I gritted my teeth. I couldn't step out of the circle. I had to stand still. I shot back. Miss. He shot. Hit. Each arrow was a firebrand under the skin. No flesh torn, but pain so sharp it blurred my eyes. "Stand tall, kitchen archer," Joss roared with laughter. I wiped sweat with the back of my hand and forced my gaze steady. I aimed. I released. The arrow skimmed past Rowan's sleeve. His face didn't change. He knocked, drew, loosed, breath-even rhythm. Thuck. Right shoulder. Thuck. Chest. Thuck. Knee. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. I washed the greens fast, stacked the baskets neatly, handed them to the head cook, then ran straight to the training grounds. Dew still clung to the grass. At the private range in back, Uncle Aldrich was already standing there with a full arrow rack. He was practicing. Set the feet, raise the bow, draw, release. The arrows ripped out with wind-sharing speed. Thwack, thwack, thwack. 3 arrows into the bullseye in a row. He changed his stance, changed the distance, same result. The rhythm was so quick, I couldn't keep count. like a bow-shooting machine. Every arrow sank deep, dead center. For 15 years, he had been captain of the Longbow Corps. In Timberkeep, the captain of the Longbow Corps undergoes an ancient rite in the Evershade Grove to receive the power bestowed by the forest god. After the rite, that person gains speed and physical strength beyond everyone else. Aim and rate of fire leap far ahead as well. All those advantages still showed clearly on Uncle Aldrich, even though he had grown much older. I called out, "Uncle Aldrich!" He turned, smiled. "You're here. Come into the tent." I followed. Inside were a tidy table, the sacred bow of Evershade Grove, bestowed by the forest god, and a separate quiver. He gestured for me to sit, poured me a cup of cool tea with his own hands, then asked, "You really want to join the Longbow Corps, don't you?" I nodded. "Yes, I want it very much." He spoke slowly. "I admire your spirit and courage. Yesterday, you didn't give up. Here's what we'll do. I'll move you out of the kitchen. You'll come up to the range to clean up and collect arrows. When there's time, I'll train you." My heart pounded as I listened. I answered at once, "I agree." I took the badge from my pocket and set it on the table. "And this." Uncle Aldrich smiled and pushed the badge back to me. "An early gift from me. Keep it. Be as you were when you fought on the street yesterday. Never surrender." I clenched the badge. "I won't surrender." He nodded. "We start today. I'll inform the kitchen to find someone to replace you. From today, you work at the range. Your tasks: set up targets, collect arrows, check bows, chalk the lines. Once you've finished your work, you're allowed to train. First, stand correctly and breathe evenly. I'll guide you step by step." With that, Uncle Aldrich left the tent to begin the session for Timberkeep's Longbow Warriors, and I was still light with joy. I looked at the Evershade heartstring bow on the rack. It is the most powerful and fastest bow in Timberkeep. It is fought alongside generations of longbow captains on the battlefield. It is the symbol of the Longbow Corps. Just for a very brief moment, my heartbeat changed. I saw my goal clearly. I went straight off to do every task Uncle Aldrich had assigned me, more eager than ever. All that day, I cleaned the range, set up targets, mark lines, pick up arrows, check strings, rack the bows. The sun climbed high and then sank low. By late afternoon, I finally finished. Uncle Aldrich was still standing at the edge of the yard waiting for me. Seeing me step out, he spoke briefly. "To the line. Let's begin training." He taught me the most basic things: set the feet, open the shoulders, draw to the cheek, hold the breath, release smoothly. I repeated it until my hands trembled before resting. At the end of the set, he said, "We'll train the same way tomorrow. Get the technique truly right first. We'll increase speed after." Time slipped by. A year had passed. I had gotten better. At 25 meters, I could hit the wooden target. Not every arrow. Plenty still went wide. I still couldn't shoot while moving. I was still skinny, still weaker than everyone, but I skipped no session. Morning cleanup, afternoon practice. This afternoon, I had just lowered my bow to rest when Uncle Aldrich walked over. He handed me a bowl of water. "Drink." I drank. He sat down beside me and spoke slowly. I've been captain for 15 years. It's time to step down. Someone more deserving than me must carry this duty forward. I kept quiet. He looked out at the range, voice even. In 5 days, there will be an announcement of the one chosen as the next captain. After that, the rite at Evershade Grove. That person will receive the forest god power. As for me, I will return mine. My throat tightened. I lowered my head. Uncle! He waved a hand. No need to be sad, Reverie. The time has come. My eyes stung. I cried not out of regret. I was proud of him. His whole life he'd campaigned hard to protect Timberkeep, leading everyone through so many trials. Now he'd earned his rest, and I felt happy for him. He patted my shoulder lightly. Turn in early tonight. We'll train again tomorrow. 5 days slipped by in the shared anticipation of all Timberkeep, and at last the great ceremony arrived. The entire city poured into the valley within the Evershade Grove. The scene was solemn. A grandstand on a cool, lush green lawn. Upon it stood Lord Kalen Ironwood, the revered lord who led the whole city, and his council, 7 members holding 7 different offices. Uncle Aldrich was ready to step up to the dais. The crowd swelled, chanting Uncle Aldrich's name. Aldrich! Aldrich! He raised his voice, and everyone fell silent to listen. Greetings, everyone. I am Aldrich Longstride. 15 years have passed since I took the post of captain of the Longbow Corps, and I have grown much older since then. Perhaps it is time we found a new captain. Today, before the Honorable Lord Kalen Ironwood and the Council of Timberkeep, I submit my resignation and present the name that is my choice for the next captain of the Longbow Corps. Thank you for trusting me. Applause rose like waves. My nose stung. Uncle Aldrich unrolled a parchment. The next captain of the Longbow Corps is Milo Reverie. The air froze. A few mouths opened without sound. I went rigid where I stood. Somewhere, Finn let out a baffled, "Huh?" Rowan snapped around, eyes sparking. Whispers rippled. Who? The greenswasher? Is this a mistake? I clenched my fists. My heart thudded. Rowan took half a step forward and called out, "My Lord Ironwood, this is absurd!" Kalen answered evenly, "Everyone, be calm. The sitting captain has made his nomination, but the nominee must be accepted by the forest spirit and granted power. Only then, whoever it is, must all of Timberkeep place their trust in them. But if the forest spirit does not grant power to Milo Reverie, Aldrich's choice will mean nothing." Uncle Aldrich stepped up. "I believe I am not mistaken. Reverie, step forward." I moved. My legs felt weighed with lead. As I passed him, I heard him murmur, "Straighten your back, breathe steady." I stood before the dais. Hundreds of eyes press on me, surprise, doubt, and snickering. Aldrich spoke. "I believe in this young man. He has courage and a fierce steadiness, qualities most essential to a warrior of the Longbow Corps. Now comes the rite of receiving the forest's power. Please wait calmly for the outcome." Uncle Aldrich leaned close, for me alone. "Remember, I chose you, and I trust you. Stand firm with me in that trust." Wind moved through the leaves. I did not know if I was worthy. I only knew to draw a deep breath and grasped the badge I always wore inside my shirt. The ceremonial drums boomed 3 times. Uncle Aldrich and I stepped onto the platform. Below, Lord Kalin, the council, and the whole city were looking up. 3 forest wardens stood at the rim of the dais beside a bowl of amber resin and a ceremonial bundle of arrows. Uncle Aldrich went first. He dipped an arrow into the bowl of resin and raised the legendary bow, Evershade Heartstring, pronouncing each word. "The power I once borrowed from the forest, today I return to the forest." He loosed. The arrow flashed away and thudded into a round wooden target carved into an ancient trunk at the center of the valley, about 30 meters from us. His body flared with light and then went dark. He opened his eyes, looked at me, and drew an arrow from the bundle and handed it to me with the Evershade Heartstring. "Your turn." I stepped up. Uncle Aldrich whispered, "3 vows, then 1 true shot." I dipped the arrowhead into the resin. A warm scent of wood rose. I lifted the arrow and said, "I shoot for Timberkeep. I will not use arrows for pride or blind revenge. I will not betray the forest." The wardens nodded. I set my feet, raised the bow, and drew to my cheek. My heart beat in time with the taut string. Before me was the round target, carved into the trunk, the ritual mark for generations. I exhaled and released. The arrow left the string with a short whoosh and drove into the target. The whole valley held its breath. The tree trunk thrummed a low note. The leaves above shivered all at once, then stilled. Uncle Aldrich watched me. Lord Kalin said nothing. I clenched the badge inside my shirt. Perhaps the forest spirit was listening and would give me an answer. My body suddenly shone. The light sprang up for about 5 seconds, then died out, just as it had with Uncle Aldrich. The valley fell utterly silent. Uncle Aldrich clapped, voice ringing. "Well then, reverie! Tell everyone, have you been granted the forest's power?" I stepped to the edge of the dais. All of Timberkeep stood before me, eyes stacked like a wall. My heart pounded, each beat like a hammer. My throat went dry. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. My knees wanted to buckle. I opened my mouth and no sound came. Air thickened in my chest. I could hear leaves rasping above, and the clatter of someone dropping a bowl somewhere below. Sweat slid from my temples down my neck. Everything I didn't want to remember surged up. The 0 on the board, the laughter on the drill field, the blunt arrow on Fletcher Row. Those images jostled in front of my eyes, making me want to step back. I looked to Uncle Aldrich. He only gave a slight nod and said, "Straight back, steady breath." I took a short breath, exhaled, again. I swallow, edge another half step closer to the wooden lip. I'm about to speak when the sky suddenly shrieks. Hundreds of arrows pour down like rain. A longbow warrior shouts, "The Blood Serpent Order is attacking! Protect the Lord! Protect the innocents!" The crowd bursts apart. Some cover their heads and run, others pitch into the shrubs. Wooden shields are thrown up. Arrows stick with thunk, thunk into the faces of the shields. Someone takes one straight in the shoulder, collapses, dragging 2 or 3 others down. Children wail. The flag before the dais is torn in half and drops onto the grass. The smell of sap mixes with blood. I look up. Every arrow is painted red like blood. It's the mark of the Blood Serpent Order. The Blood Serpents are archers expelled from the Longbow Corps, led by Severin Redcoil. In the past, he colluded with enemies outside the walls, plotting to seize Timberkeep. They were beaten by Uncle Aldrich and banished from the city by Lord Caelan Ironwood. Since then, they've lurked in the forest, never giving up their intent to conquer Timberkeep. Perhaps today they knew Uncle Aldrich would return his strength to the forest spirit, and that the new captain could not yet be as steady and battle-wise as Uncle Aldrich. They've come back, from above, from behind the leaves, firing in torrents into the valley. I grab a staggering child and pull them behind a tree trunk. A red arrow bites into the ground right by my heel. A few steps away, a workshop hand clutches a blood-wet arm, teeth clenched, still shielding his wife. The longbow warriors form ranks, shields raised into a roof. Commands ripple down the green. I look toward the dais. Uncle Aldrich has leapt down, signaling with his hands, eyes sweeping the valley. Then he starts shouting orders to deploy the longbow corps for defense and counterattack. The two sides meet right in the valley. The longbow corps spreads out and fires back, our shafts pinning into the forest's edge. Across from us, the blood serpents hide behind trunks. Red arrows come in measured waves, faster and faster. A few of our warriors take hits in the shoulder, the thigh, but they hold formation. Suddenly, a long horn blast shrieks from inside the woods, then cuts off. The red arrows thin. Red-cloaked figures of the Blood Serpent Order pull deeper under the canopy. The whole line is bewildered. They just attacked, and now they're withdrawing? A longbow warrior turns toward the dais and suddenly screams, voice cracking across the valley. They've taken Lord Caelan Ironwood! I don't know how, but in the chaos the blood serpents ambush the guards and drag the Lord away. If Lord Caelan is in their hands, Timberkeep can hardly stand. After them! Rescue the Lord! Uncle Aldrich roars. He vaults onto a horse, snatching up an ordinary bow. The longbow corps tightens reins and hurtles like arrows into Evershade Grove. I freeze for a heartbeat. The Evershade heartstring is in my hands, and Uncle carries only a common bow. I suddenly realize I'm holding an immense responsibility. I don't feel fear anymore. What I need to do is fight to defend Timberkeep. I snatch a bundle of arrows and sling it over my back. I have no horse, so I sprint after the longbow corps on foot. I launch forward and startle at how light my steps are. My breathing is deep and even. I see every knot in the tree trunks, even the tiny hair on the fletching of a red arrow stuck crooked on the trail. A dry branch snaps up ahead. My head dips to slip under it before I can think. My ears catch hoofbeats, though they're far away. I hear the creak of leather saddles. I run faster than I ever have. Each footfall tells me my body is slicing ahead, and I slip past every obstacle with ease. Yes, this is the strength the forest spirit granted me through the ritual just now. The blood serpents are truly devious. They waited until Uncle Aldrich had given back all his strength before they struck. I caught up. The two sides were fighting in a clearing in the forest. Arrows hissed past, each wish followed by a thunk into wood, into shields, and sometimes a cry from someone who'd been hit. The Blood Serpent Order were being pressed tighter together, but they were still firing back hard. The longbow corps formed a curve, taking turns loosing arrows. Perhaps feeling they couldn't hold much longer, the blood serpents dragged the Lord into the fray. He was bound tight, kneeling on the ground, hair matted with sweat. A soldier pressed a knife to his neck. The leader of the blood serpents, Severin Redcoil, shouted, "If you don't let us go, he dies now." Both sides froze. The wind through the leaves sounded like a hiss. Uncle Aldrich stepped forward one pace, voice held down. "You will not get out of Timberkeep. My full force is on its way. Lower the knife, release the Lord, and you will be allowed to leave." Severin Redcoil smiled, a mean curl of the mouth. He flicked his hand. The man with the knife slashed the Lord's shoulder. Blood soaked his tunic. "Everyone, put your bows down!" I saw my uncle's jaw clench. He looked at Kalen, then lowered his hand in a signal. "Step back and lower your bows." The longbow corps murmured as they eased their arrows down. Shields stayed up, but the strings slackened. I had moved to stand beside Uncle Aldrich. He noticed me, a spark in his eye, then dipped his head the slightest bit and spoke low enough for only us two. "Circle behind them. I'll negotiate. Ask to trade myself as hostage for the Lord. Once the Lord is safe, you strike, and the longbow corps will cover you." I nodded. My heartbeat settled. I slid back half a step, slipped out of sight, and sprinted, silent as breath, so the blood serpents wouldn't hear me. By then, Uncle Aldrich had begun negotiating. They had agreed. Uncle Aldrich raised his empty hands and walked slow, voice steady. "I come alone." I edged up a small rise behind them. The distance shrank. One more step would give me the angle. I stopped and set an arrow to the string. The Lord was pulled back behind the shield line to safety. Uncle Aldrich's signal was a slight nod. I loosed. The first arrow punched through the knife man's wrist. He dropped the blade with a shout. I pivoted, drew again. The second arrow sank into the biceps of an archer scrambling up an oak trunk. He slid down. The third time, I dipped my shoulder and drove a shot straight into another man's chest. The longbow corps laid down cover. The shield wall opened a slit. Our arrows poured in on the cross, cutting off their retreat. I surged into the gap inside the blood serpent formation. Slip left, draw, loose. One man clutched his thigh and folded. Slide right, drop to a knee, shoot low at an ankle. He collapsed. I rose, changed angle, shot high to drop the archer up in the leaves. Evershade heartstrings spat arrows like a machine. The shafts flew fast and hard. I stopped thinking. I saw targets and dropped them in a blink. I was more focused and fired up than ever. My body felt light, quick, precise. My eyes were clear. I could hardly believe that a skinny, sickly Tichin boy like me could fight like this. Then I heard a thunk, very close, right behind me. Someone had been hit, not by my arrow. The sound was at my back. I turned. Oh, Uncle Aldrich. He had slipped free of his captor, and as soon as he spotted Severin Redcoil drawing on me from behind, he threw himself in to shield my back. Severin's arrow drove straight into my uncle's chest. He held himself up for half a heartbeat, eyes locked on me. "Keep going," he said short, then dropped to one knee, one hand clamped over the wound. Severin stepped out from behind a trunk, bowstring still trembling. A thin smile. He ordered the remaining blood serpents to withdraw. Their horn sounded again. Red cloaks vanished into the trees. We did not give chase. The Lord gave a curt order. "Get Aldrich back to the city, now!" We knelt by my uncle. The arrow was lodged under the shoulder. I snapped the shaft, pressed cloth to the wound, my other arm holding him upright. Two warriors lifted him onto a horse. Blood kept seeping through the bandage, darker by the moment. The horse bolted. I ran alongside. I heard his broken breaths between the hoofbeats, heard his teeth grind when the horse jolted. Each time he groaned, my heart clenched. My head spun like a wheel. If he hadn't lunged, that arrow would have buried itself in my back. If he didn't make it, then what? 15 years as captain, he'd given everything to me, and in the end he had to take that venomous arrow for me. I was afraid. I wanted to turn back into the forest, to draw and empty every shaft left in my quiver into Severin Redcoil. But nothing mattered more now than keeping Uncle Aldrich alive. The city gates opened, the guard shouted for a healer, the streets parted like water. Fletcher Row flashed by, Bowyer's stood frozen. The horse didn't slow until we reached the barracks. We got him in fast. The healer rushed up, stripped the bandage, and motioned for me to let go. I stepped back and only then felt my hands shaking. The door slammed shut. I stood in the corridor, cold sweat at my nape, still clutching Evershade heartstring. I bowed my head and whispered a prayer to the forest god. Please keep him here with Timberkeep. I stood outside the room. It was late afternoon, dusk light slanting across the wooden wall. The air was thick with herbs and bandages. Water poured, a spoon touched a bowl. Someone coughed softly. I leaned on the wall, my arms around Evershade heartstring. I was afraid. I blamed myself. That arrow should have been mine to take. I should have watched our backs. If I had loosed a heartbeat faster, if I hadn't plunged into the enemy line, each if struck my chest like an arrow. I shut my eyes to steady myself. I wanted to forget everything for a moment and pray for Uncle Aldrich, but that thunk still rang in my head. The door swung open. The healer looked at me. Reverie, come in. He wants to see you. There was only a bed and a small cabinet in the room. Uncle Aldrich lay on the bed. The arrow had been pulled from his chest, but the blood wouldn't stop, and his breathing was faint. When he saw me, he smiled gently and beckoned me closer. Don't blame yourself, he whispered. This is war. Any warrior can fall, as long as Timberkeep stays safe. I knelt and took his hand. Uncle. He looked straight at me. Reverie, you are my choice. You are my trust. Never surrender. Fight with courage for Timberkeep, for every soul in the city, and for Evershade Grove. I nodded, my throat tight. Remember 3 things, he said slow, each beat distinct. When afraid, breathe evenly. When you fall, get up at once. Arrows that miss, forget them quickly. His hand brushed my bow. Evershade heartstring is the heart of the forest. Trust it, and it will guide you. He squeezed my hand once. His breath thinned, but the smile remained. Timberkeep needs you. His hand slipped down. The room was so quiet I could hear the lamp flame just lit. I bowed, pressed my forehead to the back of his hand, bandage soaking. Then I stood straight, gripped the bow and drew a long breath like he taught me. No one spoke a word, but everyone knew the legend of Timberkeep, Aldrich Longstride, had fallen bravely. I sprang to my feet, eyes fixed on the door, my heart hot as coal. Rage surged. Severin Redcoil had taken Uncle Aldrich from me. I would find him. I would destroy him and wipe out the blood serpent. I ran straight to the training yard. The Arrow storehouse was still open. I grabbed 3 bundles, bound them tight with rope, and slung them across my back. Evershade heartstring sat snug in my hand. The string taut and true. I let out a horse, swung up, and drove for the south gate. Wind slapped my face. Stone road slid under the hooves. I heard my own heartbeat clearly. Everything ahead seemed to open. People in the city watched me, but no one had time to say anything. At the gate, the guards started. Captain Reverie! I didn't stop, only shouted, "Open the gate for me!" They drew the bar. The heavy gate screeched. I shot through. Beyond the walls lay dirt road, then the forest's edge. The sky pressed low. I loosened the reins to let the horse breathe, then urged hard again. I retraced the signs of the afternoon's battle: bent grass, a red fletching, old hoofprints crushed by new. Clues gathered. I knew they hadn't gone north as before, they had swung south to skirt the dry ravine out. I lowered myself to the horse's neck and whispered, "Faster." Uncle's words kept beating in my skull. Breathe, stand up, forget the arrows that miss. I drew deep breaths. I didn't think about failure. I held one target in mind: Severin Redcoil. Up sandy rises, down gentle slopes. The trees thinned, then thickened again. I reined in beside a great oak. Fresh cross scratches scored its bark. Below, a red arrow lay in the dust, and in the insect chorus I caught footsteps. 3? No, 4 men. Not far. I tied the horse to the trunk, pulled down one bundle of arrows, and slung it across my chest for a quick draw. "Aldrich, I'm going now," I said very softly. I sprinted straight toward the footsteps without a second's hesitation, and in a flash I loosed 3 arrows in a row. I cut down 3 blood serpent soldiers who were hauling water. I raised my bow at the last one and forced him to spill the location of the blood serpent's lair. The soldier quickly pointed me to a path into a small valley deep in the forest where the blood serpents were encamped. I let the bowstring go and ran for it at once. I didn't bother to look back, but I still heard the scream that soldier let out. Following the valley entrance with a speed the forest god had granted me, in a moment I reached the outer edge of the blood serpent's camp. Night had fully fallen. I kept to the fence, vaulted over, and dropped softly inside. The smell of cook-fire smoke, low voices. I slipped behind a large pile of firewood and peered out. In the middle of the camp stood a tent with the blood serpent banner. A few soldiers carried in cloths and basins of water, likely Severin Redcoil's place. I traced the route. From the wood pile to the tent, there were a few handcarts and 2 mounds of canvas. 3 guards at the tent's door. 1 wore a horn, 1 held a spear, 1 sat on the ground, inattentive. I glided forward without the faintest sound, pressed up to the tent, drew 3 arrows and set them between my fingers. A light breeze from left to right. I edged my body to the right. Heart steady. Evershade heartstring lay still. I lined up on the one with the horn first. Draw. Loose. Whiz! He jerked and crumpled before he could lift the horn to his mouth. I switched targets. Draw. Loose. Whiz! The spear carrier reeled, flung the spear, and dropped to his knees. The third sprang up, mouth open. I didn't wait. Draw. Loose. Whiz! He fell flat on his back, hand never reaching the tent flap. I crawled low, slipped past the handcarts, dragged the 3 bodies into shadow, picked up 1 arrow still usable, and slid it back into the quiver. Inside the tent, I saw only a single figure sitting motionless, no sound of an alarm horn. I still hadn't been discovered. I stood flush to a tent stake and breathed in, left hand gripping the edge of the canvas, right hand holding the bow. I fixed my exit path again. 3 steps back to the canvas mound, 5 more to the wood pile. I whispered, barely a breath, "Uncle Aldrich, I'll avenge you." Then I lifted the tent edge, slid inside, raised the bow and shot an arrow straight into the forehead of the figure seated in the center of the tent. I was certain the shot could not miss. The arrow flew and struck, but the sound was strange, not the sound of an arrow entering flesh. It was like the sound of an arrow biting into the wooden targets I'd trained on all this time. I realized at once it wasn't Severin Redcoil at all. It was only a wooden effigy of him. They had tricked me. A horn split the night. Flames flared all around the camp at once. I burst out of the tent to find the ring closed tight. Severin Redcoil stood in the center, the same thin smile he wore when he shot Uncle Aldrich. I said nothing. I drew and loosed. The first shaft pinned the nearest man's wrist, and his blade clattered down. I twisted my hips, changed my angle, sent the second into the knee of the spear carrier. He folded. The third sprang up, mouth open. I didn't wait. Draw. Loose. Whiz. He fell flat on his back, hand never reaching the tent flap. I crawled low, slipped past the handcarts, dragged the three bodies into shadow, picked up one arrow still usable, and slid it back into the quiver. Inside the tent, I saw only a single figure sitting motionless, no sound of an alarm horn. I still hadn't been discovered. I stood flush to a tent stake and breathed in, left hand gripping the edge of the canvas, right hand holding the bow. I fixed my exit path again. 3 steps back to the canvas mound, 5 more to the wood pile. I whispered, barely a breath, "Uncle Aldrich, I'll avenge you." Then I lifted the tent edge, slid inside, raised the bow, and shot an arrow straight into the forehead of the figure seated in the center of the tent. I was certain the shot could not miss. The arrow flew and struck, but the sound was strange, not the sound of an arrow entering flesh. It was like the sound of an arrow biting into the wooden targets I'd trained on all this time. I realized at once it wasn't Severin Redcoil at all. It was only a wooden effigy of him. They had tricked me. A horn split the night. Flames flared all around the camp at once. I burst out of the tent to find the ring closed tight. Severin Redcoil stood in the center, the same thin smile he wore when he shot Uncle Aldrich. I said nothing. I drew and loosed. The first shaft pinned the nearest man's wrist, and his blade clattered down. I twisted my hips, changed my angle, sent the second into the knee of the spear carrier. He folded. The third sprang up, mouth open. I didn't wait. Draw. Loose. Whiz. He fell flat on his back, hand never reaching the tent flap. I crawled low, slipped past the handcarts, dragged the 3 bodies into shadow, picked up one arrow still usable, and slid it back into the quiver. Inside the tent, I saw only the night. At the first bend, I knelt low behind an oak root and sent a shaft straight into a blood serpent's shoulder. He toppled. I sprang up and ran on. At the second bend, I dropped 3 more in quick succession. Evershade heartstring throned short and even. My breath burned hot, but my legs still flew. The night deepened. The torches behind me thickened. Every stretch of forest had a few waiting ahead. Once I slipped by a cut in the ground, but reflex kicked in and I sprang up again, running and firing my arrows into the enemy. After a while, I'd lost all sense of direction. I didn't know where I was, and ahead of me rose a sheer cliff face, black and steep. I halted half a beat, looked left, looked right. Nothing but wet moss and cold stone. No way through. Behind me, torches speckled through the leaves. Figures fanned out like the blades of a fan, tightening the net. I reached back for more arrows, and found none. I stood still. My heart hammered inside my chest. Sweat ran down my back. I thought of Uncle Aldrich in his last moments, of his words, "When afraid, breathe. When you fall, stand up. A stray shot, forget it." I understood I'd rushed off in hatred, forgetting my duty to hold Timberkeep. If I died here, if Evershade Heartstring fell into Severin's hands, Timberkeep might not stand. I regretted it, and I was afraid. "Reverie!" Severin's voice sliced out of the dark. "This ends now!" Thuck! White pain tore through my right shoulder. The arrow punched deep. The force of it spun me half around and slammed my back to the rock. My breath snagged in my throat. My arm went numb. My vision lurched. The forest's noise suddenly fell away, leaving only a dense, solid hum.
Hard, I rushed to judge them as unathletic, undisciplined, and I mocked them. I used to be the type who judged people. The moment I saw someone just starting to work out, a familiar line popped into my head. They're only pretending to be diligent for show. Give it a few days and they'll quit. That belief didn't appear out of nowhere. My social feeds were full of New Year gym check-ins, sparkling mirror selfies, then silence after 2 weeks. At work, every January there was a charity-run sign-up, jersey photos, badges pinned, then gradually the enthusiasm vanished from the chat channel. One early spring day, my neighbor Josh started running around our apartment complex. Every morning he showed up in brand new shoes with a gleaming watch. I looked and declared, "He'll last a few days, tops." I even played it cool with my friends at the cafe downstairs, boasting I was certain he wouldn't make it past 2 weeks. Then I did something truly foolish. I bought a box of donuts and stood in the lobby, swaying and offering them every time he got back from a run. I thought it was funny, clever, a way to expose the performance. The result was the opposite. Josh kept running, and I turned into the weirdo who ruins the mood. At the office, my coworker Alicia invited everyone to form a weekend running group. I scrolled past the invite the way you scroll past a banner ad. I even dropped a few snide remarks in the internal chat that this kind of movement is just for group photos and a round of applause. When colleagues eagerly discussed training schedules, I reacted with mocking emojis. Back then, I thought I was being sharp and straightforward. 3 days later, my manager reminded me to keep a positive spirit, saying that attitude like mine drags down the team's effort. I gave a tight smile. The group still set off that weekend, and the office buzzed afterward. A big team photo went up in the pantry. I stood pouring coffee, feeling my absence from the shared story. I realized I'd excluded myself from a simple source of connection. A new cardio class opened near my place. People flocked to sign up. I only showed up to see how long it would last. The coach turned on the music. The whole class was fired up. I sat at the back, watching everyone train, muttering to the person next to me that it looks lively now, but by next week half the room will be empty. Turns out, the person beside me was a woman rehabbing after a traffic accident, trying to regain her strength. She heard me, and her face fell. I went home and suddenly saw how graceless I was. But I kept defending myself in my head. Telling the truth just hurts feelings. That's all. The reality is still the same. Then a stumble woke me up. The company organized a park run to kick off summer. I signed up at the last minute, did 0 training, mostly to prove there's nothing to it. I charged out for exactly a mile before I started gasping. My calves cramped. My heart pounded like festival drums. I pushed a little more and got a stabbing pain in my ankle, had to stop mid-course. The next day I went in for imaging. The doctor said it was just a mild strain from not warming up and having no base. I lay at home icing it, while my feed filled with beaming photos of coworkers at the finish. Suddenly, I felt like I was the only fool in my whole team. While I was laid up, I started paying closer attention to the people I used to judge. Josh kept running, but I noticed he hadn't posted anything for a month. Very early, around 6:30, he'd appear, run slow and steady, then stop to drink water. One time, taking out the trash, I saw a small calendar taped up in the shared laundry room. Each day, he'd marked a green square. No heroic captions, no slogans, just those even green squares. I realized that what I used to call showing off might be just one of 100 ways to remind yourself not to quit, and the rest happens quietly, with discipline. The turning point came on a cold morning when I clattered into the lobby on crutches and ran into Josh, stretching. He nodded hello. I answered with an apology for my earlier antics. He just smiled and said that when he first started, he posted a lot too, then found he didn't need to. The lesson I learned is this: when you see someone start training, don't guess their motives and don't rush to conclude they're only showing off. You don't know their baggage, their goals, or what gets them up early. Perseverance isn't an inborn trait. It's the result of small things done on time. Enough rest, sensible reminders, and a few supportive people. Posting a photo or checking in can be a tool for discipline, not a stage for vanity. My role is simple: respect, encourage, and mind my part. Anyone starting today needs a little quiet to keep going. As for me, whenever I'm about to toss out a judgment, I remind myself, give a clap, then get back to my own 5-minute walk.
He turned back toward me, the same sinister smile as when he shot Uncle Aldrich. The bowstring snapped. The arrow drove straight into my chest. The impact hit like a hammer. Air burst from my lungs. I pitched face down onto the damp ground, vision going black. The arrow stuck in with a thunk, just to the left, near the heart. On the ramparts, someone called my name. No one left their post. They held the line, held the walls. I knew that was right. Timberkeep had to stand, with or without me. I lay collapsed on the ground, knowing I wouldn't be breathing much longer, my body almost motionless. I gathered the last of my strength and lightly cupped the spot where his arrow had lodged. I suddenly realized the arrow hadn't sunk deep into me. There was something hard there, cold as steel. I fumbled inside my shirt. My fingertips found a bent piece of metal, the steel badge of the Longbow Company, the gift from Uncle Aldrich I always wore under my shirt. It had stopped the arrow. The steel was dented in, my shirt torn, skin burning raw, but the arrowhead was jammed against the badge. Pain still rose in waves. My right shoulder burned from the old wound. Each breath dragged thorns through my chest. My body felt leaden, my limbs no longer mine. I couldn't move yet. I shut my eyes, let go for a beat, breathed very slowly, exactly as he taught. Breathe first, then think. Outside. Suddenly, in that quiet instant, I couldn't hear anything else, even though people on the wall were still calling my name. I heard only one voice. Reverie? Yes, someone was calling, the sound ringing softly in my mind. Fight for Timberkeep. I have always belonged to the captain of the longbow company. I felt the words clearly. It wasn't a hallucination. It seemed to be Evershade Heartstring speaking. Yes, the bow was communicating with me somehow. The bow suddenly shone in Severin Redcoil's hands, the same kind of light as when my body had glowed with the forest god's gift of strength. Evershade Heartstring tore free from his grip and streaked toward me. Severin froze. I jolted awake. The pain fell back. I ripped the arrow wedged at my chest free, planted my hands, drove my feet into the earth. My body sprang up. I flipped once in the air and snatched Evershade Heartstring mid-flight. I set an arrow to the string. I raised it, aimed straight at the center of Severin's brow. I released. Time and space seemed to stop in that instant. Only the arrow moved, flashing out like lightning. Thunk. Severin Redcoil toppled backward, eyes not yet blinking. He lay motionless on the ground. In the silence after, I heard a breath of wind through the leaves. Then all Timberkeep erupted in cheers, and they shouted my name. People embraced. The watch bells clanged in rapid bursts. I landed, my knees buckling once. My right shoulder seared, my chest stabbed with every breath, but my hand still clamped Evershade Heartstring. I looked up and met the eyes of those on the ramparts. I said nothing. No need. The killer of Uncle Aldrich had fallen. The city still stood. I had done it. The blood serpents screamed. The whole band swung swords and spears, charging as if to avenge their leader. I stepped back, not yet sure what to do. Reverie! Rowan's voice from the wall. I looked up. A rope flew down. I wrapped it around my wrist and kicked hard against the wall. On the rampart, several pulled together. They hauled me up a stretch. A few more beats and I'd reach the edge. Suddenly, snap! The rope jerked and parted. A red arrow from a blood serpent had just sliced it. I fell. Below, a ring of swords and spears waited, touched the ground, and it was over. I closed my eyes, thought of training with Uncle Aldrich, thought of Timberkeep, thought of the line of people on the wall holding firm. I had done what needed to be done. If I had to die, I accepted it. Just as that thought passed, a beam of light struck square into my back. My body surged upward as if lifted. I opened my eyes, kicked the wall again and again, reached out. My fingers hooked the stone lip. I heaved and got onto the crest. Hands from the rampart hauled me over. I tumbled inside, gasping, still clutching Evershade Heartstring. I turned back. The light still hummed below the gate. It settled, drew tight, then opened into a familiar face, Uncle Aldrich. A gentle smile, a raised hand, waving to everyone. Everyone on the wall fell silent. I raised my hand too, unable to speak. The face of light dimmed and dissolved. Rowan gripped my shoulder. Being alive is enough. Captain, please give the order to wipe them out. I nodded, stood straight at the parapet. Below, the blood serpent still howled in chaos. Up here, we formed our line. I set Evershade heartstring beside me and pressed my palm to the bent steel badge under my shirt. I shouted, "For Timberkeep, the Longbow Company fires as one. Annihilate the enemy!" Arrows poured down. The blood serpents broke, falling in ranks one after another. A few threw their weapons and fled into the forest. They didn't dare look back. I placed my hand on the dented badge at my chest and looked toward Evershade. Uncle Aldrich, Timberkeep still stands. The whole city burst open. My name rolled along the ramparts. I smiled, but the wash basin in the scullery rose in my head. The first thunk on the practice range, Fletcher Row, and Uncle Aldrich's calm nod. From a scrawny kid washing greens in the kitchen to standing on the battlements today and captain of the Longbow Company. I touched the bent steel badge on my chest and lifted my gaze to Evershade. The weight is still on my shoulders. Timberkeep still needs guarding. Tomorrow we will be back on the range. I tightened my grip on Evershade heartstring and moved on.